In the icy waters of the Baltic Sea, just a short distance from Helsinki, stands one of the most extraordinary military fortresses ever built. Spread across several islands and surrounded by powerful stone walls, this fortress once protected an entire kingdom from invasion. This is Suomenlinna, a massive sea fortress that has witnessed empires rise, wars unfold, and nations gain independence. For centuries, armies fought to control it. Kings invested fortunes to build it, and today it remains one of the greatest surviving military fortresses in Europe. But how did this island fortress become one of the most important strategic strongholds in Northern Europe? To understand that story, we must travel back to the 18th century. During the early 1700s, the Baltic Sea was one of Europe's most contested regions. At the time, Sweden was one of the dominant powers in Northern Europe. Its empire stretched across Scandinavia and included what is now modern Finland. But a new rival was rapidly rising to challenge Swedish dominance. That rival was Russia, led by the ambitious and powerful ruler Peter the Great. Peter the Great wanted access to the Baltic Sea and control over important trade routes. To achieve this goal, Russia fought Sweden in several wars and began expanding westward. Sweden realized that its eastern territories were vulnerable. If Russia captured Finland, it would gain a direct route towards Sweden itself. The Swedish crown knew it needed a powerful defensive structure to stop Russian expansion, and so they decided to build one of the most ambitious sea fortresses ever constructed. In 1748, construction began on a new fortress outside Helsinki. The project was led by Swedish military engineer Augustin Ehrensvärd, a brilliant strategist and architect. His idea was revolutionary. Instead of building a fortress on land or on a mountain, he would construct a massive defensive system across several islands in the Baltic Sea. This fortress would block enemy fleets from reaching Helsinki and protect Sweden's eastern territories. Thousands of workers, soldiers, and engineers were sent to the islands. They began cutting massive blocks of stone from the rocky terrain and building enormous defensive walls. The fortress was originally called Sveaborg, meaning Castle of Sweden. Over time, it would grow into one of the most powerful naval fortifications in Europe. Constructing Suomenlinna was an incredible engineering challenge. The fortress was built across 6 separate islands, connected by bridges and defensive walls. Its design followed the famous Star Fort system, a style of fortification developed in Europe to resist cannon attacks. The walls were thick and angled so that enemy artillery would have difficulty destroying them. At its peak, thousands of people lived inside the fortress. Soldiers guarded the walls day and night, watching for enemy ships approaching from the Baltic Sea. But Suomenlinna was not only a military base, it was also a small community. Families of soldiers lived there, craftsmen worked in workshops, and merchants supplied goods to the garrison. Life inside the fortress could be difficult. The winters were long and extremely cold. Strong winds from the Baltic Sea battered the stone walls, and the surrounding waters often froze during winter. Yet, despite these harsh conditions, the fortress continued to grow stronger year after year. For decades, it remained one of Sweden's most important military installations. But eventually, a great war would test the strength of this fortress. Inside the fortress were cannon batteries facing the sea, underground tunnels and storage rooms, barracks for soldiers, military workshops, shipyards, and dry docks. The fortress quickly grew into a massive military complex. Ships could be repaired and constructed there, allowing Sweden to maintain a powerful naval presence in the Baltic Sea. Because of its strength and strategic location, the fortress soon gained a nickname, the Gibraltar of the North. In 1808, a major conflict erupted between Sweden and Russia. This conflict became known as the Finnish War. Russian forces invaded Finland, aiming to capture the territory from Sweden. One of their main targets was Suomenlinna. If the Russians could capture the fortress, they would gain control of Helsinki and the surrounding sea routes. Russian troops surrounded the fortress and began a long siege. Inside the walls were thousands of Swedish soldiers and powerful artillery defenses. But despite its strong design, the fortress faced serious problems. Supplies were limited, morale was low, and the harsh winter conditions made survival difficult. After weeks of pressure, the Swedish commander made a controversial decision. The fortress surrendered to the Russian army. This surrender shocked Europe. With the fall of the fortress, Russia gained control over Finland. For more than a century, the fortress served as a Russian naval base. Russian soldiers occupied the islands and continued strengthening the defenses. New buildings were constructed and additional artillery positions were added. The fortress remained strategically important because it protected Russia's western border and naval routes. During this period, the fortress became deeply connected to the military power of the Russian Empire. But history would soon change again. In 1917, a dramatic event transformed the region. Following the Russian Revolution, Finland declared independence from Russia. Suomenlinna was renamed Suomenlinna, meaning Castle of Finland. The name symbolized a new national identity and a new chapter in the fortress's history. Although the fortress still had some military functions, its importance as a defensive structure slowly declined. Over time, the islands began transforming into a historic and cultural site. Today, Suomenlinna is one of Finland's most famous landmarks. In 1991, it was officially recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Visitors from around the world travel to the islands to explore ancient stone walls, historic cannons, hidden tunnels, military museums, and scenic coastal views. A short ferry ride from Helsinki brings travelers directly to this remarkable fortress. Walking through the fortress today feels like stepping back in time. For nearly 3 centuries, Suomenlinna has stood guard over the Baltic Sea. It has been a Swedish stronghold, a Russian naval base, and finally, a proud symbol of Finnish heritage. Its walls have witnessed wars, sieges, and the birth of a nation. And today, this island fortress remains one of the extraordinary historical sites in all of Europe. A reminder that even the strongest walls are not just built with stone, but with history.